What's in the menu? What's in the menu? Little children, that's on the menu. Hi, welcome everybody to the Chattering Magpie's Thoughts and Impressions on Bibliophile Princess episode 9 and 10. Eliana is back at the palace, and the end-of-year celebrations are fast approaching, which means that everyone in the palace is rushing about to finish things in time for the festivities. The palace is short-staffed, and it is very hard to find the time to be together with Christopher, let alone talk like they used to. In the midst of all this, Glen is desperate. The Miseral Dukedom has sent a representative, as it always does, but this time it's a little 10-year-old girl who is destined to be his wife. First off, ew. Secondly, you need to check yourself, Glen. Womanizers never meet good ends. But anyway, his little relationship woes pale in comparison to Christopher's own trouble. Just look at the stacks of papers and documents he must get through. Let alone Eliana's issues. The poor girl needs to go and meet with the dressmakers. And man, you would think that picking out a dress is a simple matter, but no. Man, these ladies, I want to beat them back with a stick. I get that they are eager to make a sale, but they have no manners, and they're just too much for my precious baby. Eliana is presented with all kinds of dresses and jewelry designs, and one design catches her attention actually. A design featuring the Yule flower, a bloom that is rife with symbolism. She offers some insight as to its meaning and even suggests a few alterations to the dress to improve the design. Now, please note that the dress they show here is actually the design after her suggestions. The original dress had fresh flowers and a high neckline. She is the one that suggested that there be a panel with embroidered flowers and, lower the neckline, but okay, whatever. All the other merchant women beg her to also give them pointers and trends, going so far as to fight each other. When Queen Henrietta, Christopher's mother, comes in. Her presence alone makes the women comport themselves in a professional manner, and since Eliana is having trouble choosing a look for herself, the queen immediately picks it out for her. Dress, jewelry, and accessories. Once the women are gone, they have a serious talk. She reminds Eliana that she needs to be strong when dealing with the merchants and not to let herself get carried away by others. She can no longer use Christopher to hide away from her duties either, and from princess training. The queen worries that Christopher has not fully prepared Eliana for the pressure that she will face as his queen, since he tends to overprotect her. She also fears Eliana lacks the determination to become queen, and it is suggested that many noble ladies are scheming to become Christopher's royal concubine, which would grant them political power and give any potential children a chance to inherit the throne. And this scenario is one that the queen herself had to deal with in her own time. Eliana and Christopher meet Sharon, Glen's 10-year-old fiancé from the Miseral Dukedom, whose elder sister, the pearl Princess Mireille, was a childhood friend to Christopher, and once was his potential fiancé. Sharon seems eager to try to reconnect the prince and her sister, but Chris gently and firmly declines. Later on, at a social gathering, Eliana also meets Lady Dauner and her daughter Matilda, who somehow managed to steal the dress design Eliana had come up with earlier. Not only that, but she as good as presents herself as a concubine candidate, offering her talentless body to continue the royal line or some such disgusting phrasing. Eliana is thrown off by this. Not only are there women vying to take her place, but there's also someone in the palace and among her own circle and her own servants that is leaking information about her to her rivals. This is no good. These revelations shake her, and as she takes some time to recover herself, she witnesses a messenger pass Christopher a letter personally written by Mireille. Episode 10 opens with a preoccupied Eliana sitting with her brother and, oh hey, it's Lady Anna! She's now happily geeking out about history with the Bernsteins. I am glad that the anime told us what happened to her after all. Well, she seems to be having a great time, but poor Eliana is just worrying so much about Mireille, Matilda, and the possibility of there being other concubines. She overhears Sharon talking to Matilda about having come to Sauceland to kill insects. Alan, meanwhile, finds her moping about and tells her that she needs to talk to Christopher about her troubles. She attempts to see Christopher, but he's not in the office, yet she sees Mireille's letter in his desk. A servant informs Eliana that Matilda is being pressured to become Christopher's concubine by her mother, who once failed to become concubine to Christopher's father. She also advises Eliana to seriously investigate the maid who leaked her dress design, as her next betrayal will likely be worse. Eliana finally sees Christopher, but his busy schedule takes him away before they can discuss anything. Sharon visits Eliana with her guard Ellen and rudely requests that she be Christopher's partner at the Holy Night Banquet instead of Eliana, as it would publicly strengthen Mireille's chance to become Christopher's concubine. She also points out that Mireille would be ideal to manage Christopher's court, while the useless Eliana could stick to her books and keep out of the way. Eliana truly worries that she's a nuisance to Christopher, but is scared to ask him. She becomes completely despondent and in the end asks Christopher to postpone their wedding before she rushes out into the dark, snowy night. Ellen sees her crying and interferes, just when Christopher had come running after Eliana to talk to her. Eliana, however, can't bring herself to face him, so she decides to temporarily return to her parents' home and is saddened when Christopher agrees and then walks away from her. So, I've been holding back on commentary because the brunt of it boils down to me railing against these horrible, horrible women. Not the Queen, she's cool. Agatha too, and Lady Anna as well. And probably Ellen. She seems to be a pretty cool lady, even though her interference did Eliana more harm than good. As to the leak, well, I personally suspect Sarah. She's the only maid that we know by name, and I don't personally remember her being her old maid from back at home. Additionally, in the light novel, when Eliana is thinking about who the leak is, there was a line or two that jumped out at me. In the back of my mind, I picture Sarah and the other young maids working in the inner palace. Since I first became the prince's fiancé 4 years ago, I had grown to understand the hearts of the people in the palace. Those employed here were either people who had lost loved ones to the Ashen Nightmare 15 years ago, or women and children from families who no longer had a breadwinner to care for them. The palace was the face of our country. The royal family had prioritized those in crisis. While Eliana thinks that none of those working in the palace would do anything to tarnish the queen's good name, there is still the very real possibility that those who seek to find a way into the castle will take advantage of the unfortunate circumstances of some of the employees. If there are people who are in a crisis, they are going to be the targets for these unscrupulous ones. They might be easier to convince into becoming a leak since they may have money or other kinds of troubles. I'm just saying. As to Eliana, well, let's talk about her not being able to choose her own clothing. And, cut the girl some slack, okay? At age 18, I was wearing gray, black, and white, and my idea of fashion was, well, I don't remember. At 18, I was in college, I was broke, and I couldn't even afford my college's hoodie. But I'm pretty sure I had terrible fashion sense. Eliana's problems stem from being shown too much too quickly and being browbeaten about choosing something. It's not like it's just choosing a dress. For the crown princess, choosing a dress will affect trends and so on. And this is a problem because Eliana, the light novel tells us, is not interested in fashion, at all. She was brought up motherless, so the only person that would help her with choosing clothes was her aunt and maybe her cousins. Over the years, she did manage to have an eye for fashion for herself, and it's much more subdued than most other girls, with an emphasis on function rather than form. But everyone wanting to dress her up like a doll is just too much for her, and having to choose her own wardrobe from among all of those choices, and without the help and support of her women relatives, is a daunting task indeed. Next, let's talk about Eliana's talk with the queen. Eliana has some very large shoes to fill, but while the queen is stern, she's not unkind at all. The queen reminds her that when it's just the two of them, Eliana should address her as mother, something that Eliana finds difficult to do. Queen Henrietta is under the impression that Eliana is forcing herself to call her mother. In fact, when I was watching the anime, I was thinking like, man, Eliana really doesn't want to call her mother. That's a really precious title. She's not going to easily call another woman mother. But the truth is that Eliana, who hasn't had a mother of her own, is actually shy and overcome with emotions at being able to call the queen her mother. What really had my heart hammering in my chest was thinking of how long it had been since I'd used the word she wanted to hear. It was precious and nostalgic. The mere thought of it evoked a sense of warmth that I couldn't get anywhere else, blanketing around me. My eyes automatically shifted to the floor, my cheeks warming. I clutched nervously at my knees. Then I spoke the word, voice infused with joy and longing. Mother. In the light novel, we also learned that Queen Henrietta's mother was a princess from the Miseral Dukedom, so Henrietta has very strong ties to their ally, and because of these strong ties, Queen Henrietta tries to not get involved with diplomatic matters. Not because she is not good at them, as Chris had told Eliana a few episodes ago, but rather to maintain a balance and keep the Miseral Dukedom and other countries from trying to sway Soslin's politics too much. In fact, even the Miseral Dukedom was ready to send over a replacement when the queen was sick and battling for her life. Since she had only managed to have Christopher after several years of marriage, they figured that she was a faulty model. Well, a pox on the whole lot of them. The poor woman really must have gone through a lot while she was sick. No wonder she wants to remain as neutral as possible after they treated her like that. And finally, this brat. Oh my gosh, okay, so in the light novel, Lady Sharon requested some of Eliana's time in order to consult with her about Lord Glen. So Eliana, out of the kindness and goodness of her heart, invites her to her private quarters for tea, whereupon Eliana begins to talk to her at great length about gardening. Yeah, gardening. I heard the winters in Soslin are harsher than the dukedom, but I'm not so sure how this conversation on insect repellent really applies to me. Oh, I felt completely embarrassed. I had heard her speak before about how she'd like to come here to repel insects, so I just assumed she was interested in the topic. I must have misunderstood her. Oh, Eliana, you lovable dork. You're so earnest and so willing to help people with your vast knowledge. Your kindness was wasted on this hellion. Oh my gosh, this kid, I hated her so much. You've heard me talk about Corbett urges. Well, I am suddenly struck with the Corbett urge to terrorize small children. And this small child in particular. She was so annoying. And even some people told me that I needed to tone it down. Like, how could I say that about a little kid? And so on. Well, watch me. The kid's going down. And look, I agree Eliana is much too soft, much too gentle, much too sweet for these courtly intrigues and all these pests. And some people are saying that everybody else is solving her problems for her and that she's just too passive. I beg to differ. Many people, myself included at times, want her to be more assertive, more forward. We want her to stake her claim and basically do what I want to do, punch her rivals in the throat. We all want her to be a badass heroine, right? But then, we have many such girls in anime. Eliana is an outlier. There's not many gentle girls, meek girls, honest and sweet girls in leadership positions. There really isn't. The world wants sweet introverts like her to totally change the way they are and become cookie-cutter, overpowered heroines or something, and I don't want that. Gentle girls also deserve to be heroines. They also deserve a story of their own, and I know for a fact that she will find a way out of this without resorting to petty evil schemes like her rivals, or to violence. One of the things that I really like about Bibliophile Princess and about Eliana's character specifically is just how well written she is. She's an overthinker, she's incredibly smart, but an overthinker nonetheless. And so, when faced with situations like these, she reacts exactly as an overthinker would. I know people like her, and I know that they tend to struggle a lot when it comes to relationships. Sometimes those that are the quietest tend to feel the strongest, and Eliana is one such case. In the light novel, when she is running away after she told Chris that she wanted to postpone the wedding, her emotions are just so raw, and I really loved how the author chose to convey her turmoil. My emotions seemed to barrel out of control when I couldn't handle them. Gone was the confidence I had cultivated from my shared feelings with the prince. While I might not believe that the prince was the kind of person who would ignore me in favor of building a harem, I found myself second-guessing when it came to Lady Mireille. My apprehension began to grow uncontrollably until I was filled with a detestable cluster of emotions. It was the first time I had ever felt this before. A selfish rage, the complete opposite of love and yet just as powerful, consumed me. The emotion was pitch black, hanging over me like a thick cloud, so I could focus on nothing else. To be honest, I was terrified of His Highness discovering how I felt. Maybe that's why I ran. I worried what he would think if he discovered this hideous side of me. I didn't want to relinquish the prince to someone else. I didn't want him to have an intimate connection with another woman. I didn't want him to smile like that for anyone else. I didn't want him to use his sweet voice to call another woman's name. All I want to say though is, Eliana, you may doubt many things. Maybe even your ability to pick out your own dress. Fine. But never ever doubt yourself. You are awesome. As to Prince Chris and his love for you, he loves you, girl, and I hope this gets sorted out soon. Let's see what next week has in store for us. Crossing fingers that things don't get worse before they get better, because this shot of Chris walking away actually hurt me real bad.